periods of time where the property is going to be lying empty, and if you've got something else on, that's, you could end up losing 3, 4, 5, 6, in my case, a year's worth of rent from that place. That happens with me. I've got another property, and I'm going to embarrass myself. It's been sitting empty for 7 years. In 2017, 18, I burnt out, and I thought, me, so passionate, so energetic, so driven, so in love with my work. And I used to hear people, like, I've heard it on the internet saying, oh, if you love your work, you can never burn out. That's bullshit.
Hi, I'm Mr. Property.
And I'm Mrs. Property. Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to Move With Us by Mr. and Mrs. Property, where we discuss all things property from a starter perspective. So we created this podcast for starters, by starters.
Yeah, absolutely. And today's guest is someone who has done the corporate world stuff for around 10 years as a management consultant, and then took the plunge, moved on to business and then property as well. He's someone I've been following for a good time, so I'm really pleased he's here. And all it took was for him to comment on one of our TikToks, and he said yes, thankfully. So Ajmal Mushtaq, welcome. Great to have you. Thank you for your time here.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to speaking about all things property.
Yes, exciting stuff. So as I mentioned, you started off as a management consultant, did 10 plus years there, and then you decided to take the plunge, move into the kind of business world and property. You were really well established in your career, doing well for yourself, you were settled, you were comfortable. So what made you, after all that kind of hard work, want to transition into the corporate world and then eventually property? What did it for you?
So I worked as a management consultant in London for the best part of a decade, and I was in a meeting once with a very senior executive, and we were talking about spreadsheets, and we were talking about numbers, and we're talking about just work. And it suddenly dawned on me, this guy was maybe 10 years ahead of me, and he was a partner in the firm, right? And I thought, wait a minute, if I work my backside off for the next 10 years, I'm going to be sat at this very same table doing what we're doing just now. And I thought, no thanks. And at the same time, I had this burning desire inside me. I had so much more fuel in the tank, but I felt shackled in the corporate world. And I thought, if I get out there in the real world, I know I can make a go of it. And I did. And thankfully, it worked out very, very well for me.
And what would you say, like, where we are also kind of hoping to transition from corporate to property business, what would you say is something that we need to know?
You need to understand that your life is going to change. You are going to go through the shit for the next 6 years of your life, 5, 6 years, guaranteed. And you're going to regret, like, you're going to think back and think, we had 6 weeks holiday a year, we had sick leave, we had holidays, we had this, we had that. We worked in a nice environment, we had good, smart colleagues, and then we've chucked it to bloody do painting in a 1-bedroom flat on the 3rd floor of some random property in London. And you're going to kick yourself, but you have to go through the phase, and everyone has to go through that phase. And another side of that mountain of shit is, the success that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So understand it's not an easy journey. It's a tough journey, and not everyone's cut out for it.
No, and I suppose once you're kind of climbing up that mountain, a lot of people fall down the mountain, don't even make it over because they think, oh, this is just going to be our life. But as you mentioned, that 5-6 years of perseverance and resilience is key there.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing with most people. I dedicated 6 years of my business life, the first 6 years of my business life to my craft, and I sacrificed everything, and I get a lot of negative comments. Oh, you never saw your children, you never did this, you never did that. There is no success without sacrifice. So if you can embrace that before you set out on your journey, mentally you're equipped, for the difficulty during that journey.
Good to know.
That's a good point. Thank you, Ajmal. So we're a couple in our 30s. We've got some of the corporate side of us where we've understood some of the processes and how to think a bit more strategically, if you will. But I suppose with that, because we're in our 30s, we've got a bit of a different perspective on things. But for someone, for example, in their 18s, What advice would you give to them, for example, in terms of skills? What do they need to overcome? What would you say to yourself at 18, perhaps, to kind of say, where can you
Right.
start?
If you're 18 to 25, understand this. You have got a very, very long road ahead of you. You've got plenty of time. Don't be in a rush. The best thing I would do if I was 18 again, I think I would do exactly what I did, which is you went to university, you got into a top tier company, you worked in the top tier company for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years at least. Because in those companies, what you learn is you learn professionalism, you learn discipline, you learn how to manage people, you learn systems, you learn the importance of training. You learn all of the basic fundamental business foundation blocks of building a business, whether it's a property business, a food business, a tech business. You learn the basic fundamentals in the corporate environment, and that's not to be dismissed lightly. So I would say if you can get the option of working in a corporate environment, is something you should definitely consider.
Okay, that's interesting because a lot of stuff on social media is all about, you don't need the education. Education is a waste of time. Just fall into whatever you want to fall into. So that's quite refreshing.
Interesting. Let's hone in on that. The word education. Is it worthwhile going to university? And a lot of people are saying, no, it's not. And even I've said sometimes you learn like not very much at university. I studied 3 degrees. I did a law degree and I did a master's in finance and a master's in management accounting, right? 5 years of business subjects, not one of those subjects is relevant in the real business world, right? So I didn't learn much practical skills at university. But what it does do, university, it just gives you that steely confidence. You've been there, done that. You've got a certain level of intellect and you can sit down and debate. So I'm happy to sit and debate the world of business, marketing, growth, you name it. I've got the confidence and the ability to debate that with any expert in the world. Had I not had the university of experience and I may be up against a PhD or something, I would be like, right, oh no, this guy clearly knows more than me. I don't know much. So that's the benefit of university.
Okay, that's good. So you're someone whose business is food. You're in the food industry, but you also chose to go into property as well. So that, I guess that's another interest for you. How do you balance it? Do you balance it?
My property portfolio is passive, right? My focus was to run a very successful business, and I did. And the profit from that, invested into property. Worked really hard in the business, made profit, buy more property. Worked really hard in the business, buy more property. So I didn't set out to be a massive property owner, but by default, just by my business doing very, very well, and me sort of really working hard at that, the profits were all invested into property in the neighbouring vicinity. And that's how I ended up in the property business as well.
Okay, so it was never in the kind of script or plan to...
Never. I never set out, oh, one day I'm going to own X number of properties. Never.
I think I saw in your YouTube video, you bought, was it 10 in the same area?
Yeah.
Wow, still got them.
So the idea was the next door shop came up for sale. And I thought, you know what, that's quite interesting. I'll buy that. It's handy. And then the next door one came along. Okay, that's handy. I'll buy that. And then just by being in one place for 15 years, people move in, people move out, they sell up and go. And by being there for quite a long period of time, I've just snapped up all of those properties. And the land marriage value of all of those properties combined on the main commercial street in our region is just phenomenal.
That's really interesting because you only bought one. You didn't know what the future held, but obviously these listings came up and you took advantage. And the real advantage is you have comparables. You know exactly what's going to work.
Yeah.
And you rinse, repeat.
Exactly.
And then by the end of it, you've got what you've got.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good one. It's a good tactic.
We touched on education before. Sometimes I think how getting the right education and any other sort of elements around that. Do you feel there could be other things lacking in the property world that because you've had business acumen, so you've got business acumen and the education side. Do you think there's something else lacking in between? So, for example, could be perspective on things or attitude within the property industry.
Yeah. So I think I would say, for me, I started my business at the age of 35, and I think that is the perfect age to start your own business. And I'll tell you why. Because you've got your education, you've got a little bit of life experience under your belt. You have some money in the bank. But the most important thing is you've got the best 10 years ahead of you. See, from the age of 35 to 45, your energy levels don't decrease. They are your best years. You've ticked all the boxes and you've got so much energy just to go ahead, to charge on ahead and achieve whatever you want to. And then see, when you get to about 46, 47, naturally your body, your mind, it all slows down a little bit. I'm 49 and a half now. Feeling old.
You don't look it.
I've seen you on sort of social media, etc., talk about microprocesses in your business and how they really work for you, and you really work on those microprocesses to create an overall process. How can that translate into property? And especially for those starting, are there any processes that we need to master from day one to be successful?
Yes, the numbers. Do not delegate the numbers onto anyone else. You have got to micromanage the numbers, because the numbers can make or break you. 20 years ago, you could buy a property, let it out, make profit, happy days. That's impossible. Now, there are so many regulations. There are so many outgoings. The world of property is now totally changed. Don't go into the property business expecting to make lots of money now. The game is totally changed. There is so much regulation. So, for example, you need to get an energy performance certificate. You need to get a gas safety certificate. You need to get Legionella, a Legionella report. You need to get smoke alarms in. You need to register with the local council. There's like 10 different things that you need to do. And it's not easy for you as an individual to manage all of these, because if you drop the ball in one of them, you can end up with a fine or a heavy fine or a penalty, and you don't want to do that. So this is what I do, is I delegate the management of the property to the agents, but I micromanage the numbers, because it's much more difficult to make a profit now.
Okay. And within your property portfolio, has there been an occasion where you haven't quite managed the numbers, or have you always?
All the time. It happens all the time. So, for example, it's not that I'm not good at managing the numbers. It's just there is so much else on my plate. So a couple of years ago, someone left one of the properties and I just didn't have the time or the appetite to go and do a full refurb on that. That property lay empty for a year, purely because I didn't have the time, the energy, or the appetite to go ahead, and I had other things on my plate at the time. So these are things that you need to consider. It's not just a case of, oh yeah, you've got a property and the workmen are always going to be there to jump in and do your bathroom and renovations and clear outs. That doesn't happen. So you need to be mindful of the fact that there's going to be periods of time where the property is going to be lying empty. And if you've got something else on, you could end up losing 3, 4, 5, 6, in my case, a year's worth of rent from that place. That happens with me. I've got another property and I'm going to embarrass myself. It's been sitting empty for 7 years.
Okay.
Wow.
Right. And I'll tell you why, right? So I was doing a TV program. We needed some studio space. And I had this one property that was perfect. It was a beautiful old building. We turned it into this studio space. We filmed it. And now I'm thinking I've just not had the energy or the appetite to go and demolish it all, convert it back into a residential property and get it, on the market again. So it's just sat empty for 7 years.
And there's no demand for it
There is so much demand.
Okay.
There is so much demand. And it goes back round to this. You've got to have, a free schedule. You've got to be able to have the time in your diary. So when I've got the time in my diary, maybe my workmen aren't available, or when they're available, maybe I've got some other project going on that's higher priority.
Do you work harder now than you did when you started? Because I think you work hard. Your response times are pretty good.
Yeah, I work hard and fast. I don't mess about. If I want to do something, I get it done. So that property that lay empty for a year, when I decided I'm going to get that off the market and get it fully renovated and off the market, it happened within the whole project was done within 2 weeks.
Wow.
So.
And would you say you have a work-life balance?
Yeah, I've got a great work-life balance, but I had to work hard at it. Now I work about 25 hours a week now. That's all I need to work. And you know yourself sitting in the corporate world, right? If you take your 8-hour working day, how much of that do you actually churn out really good quality work? Yeah, so I think the statistics say, or the data tells us, is about 2 to 3 hours. So because I'm working on my own business. I don't feel a need to be there for, like 8 hours a day. I turn up, I do great work, and I go home. But 5 hours a day is all I need.
Actually, is an interesting point, because we mentioned delegating before. How much do you delegate now compared to where you did? Was it more of a certain point you start delegating, or was it? Because I know we were talking about the numbers before. Yeah. So at what point would you say you started getting better at delegating certain things?
In the early days of your business, you've got to almost know every single part of your business, or the majority areas of your business. You've got to learn them and then set up the systems and processes and then delegate. Don't just delegate, like without you actually putting the systems and processes in place. Put the systems and processes in place, then you can monitor and check, how the progress is. So for example, the marketing in our business, we've put the system, processes in place. We've given the templates, the schedules, and then we can check against that. Whereas earlier on in our sort of business life, we maybe delegated that to a company and they made a mess of it, or they didn't give us the results that we wanted.
Did you find when kind of getting a decent understanding of each area of business that you were going down the rabbit hole too deep, so to speak, where you almost tried to kind of do it yourself? Or were you quite good at stopping and saying, no, this is a professional's job?
Right. Yes. In the early days, so we took a billboard, right, like to advertise our business. And I'm quite good with PowerPoint, so I designed it myself, right? And I thought at that time, I thought it looked okay, but looking back, it was rubbish. So I think within 1 or 2 years, you actually just realize your work shouts at you that you really need to delegate this. And then when I delegated the design work onto a professional billboard designer or a professional designer, it was night and day difference. So you actually learn quite quickly that there's some things you're really good at and some things you're not, and see the things you're not, just make sure you bring in the experts and give them full sort of responsibility for executing that.
Okay.
So you mentioned a few pain points earlier about when it came to delegating and the property sitting empty. With pain points in mind, what would you say some of your biggest pain points have been throughout your property journey?
The biggest pain point would be getting tradesmen on time, especially around COVID. Things went crazy. Anything needing repaired or fixed or upgraded, it was just very, very difficult to find tradesmen and their availability. Everyone you had to book them 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance. So that's probably my biggest pain point. But I think fortunately now the market has calmed down a bit. There's not so many rental properties. People have spent all their COVID money. Businesses have spent all their COVID grants. So now things are starting to normalize again. So the availability of the tradesmen is now almost back to the way it was pre-COVID. So that was my biggest pain point.
Has there been anything in whether it's a business or property where any event, it could be a series of events or one big massive event where you thought, do you know what, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah, I think in 2017, 18, I burnt out. And I thought, me, so passionate, so energetic, so driven, so in love with my work. And I used to hear people I've heard it on the internet saying, if you love your work, you can never burn out. That's bullshit. I burnt out in 2017, 18. And the amazing thing is I didn't even realize I was burnt out. So that was that was probably one of my sort of darkest times actually in business, because at that point I just started to shut down. I thought, to hell with this. I don't need to do this. I'd rather just have something nice and simple where I don't have such a headache. And this is how it creeps up on you. And I'm going to tell you something, right? I had 8 cars, right? That's not a flex. I'm going to make a business point on this, right? I had 8 cars at one point, right? That's 8 different types of insurance. That's 8 different services, 8 different MOTs. And then it got to the point where I'm driving around one of my cars and it's not got any MOT. Its MOT expired 8 months ago, right? No. Fine. Another car I'm driving around, it's been 9 months you've been driving it around without any insurance, right? And this is me not setting out to dodge the insurance, or it's just there's just that much going on. One car's got a flat tire that needs to go in for the garage and into the garage for a puncture repair or a new tire. Another car needs a service. Another car needs an MOT. Another car needs and it's such a headache. So as my business was growing, yeah, it's great to buy this and buy that and do this, all these X, Y, Zs. but there's a mental overhead, and you don't often think that, having a lot of something is actually going to slow you down. And it got to the point where it started to cripple me. I couldn't actually make any decisions. And it's the same with my email addresses. I had a number of different, at that point, I had 4 different businesses. So 4 different businesses, they've all got at least 2 emails, and they've got their social media accounts, 2 or 3 different social media accounts. Before you know it, I've got like 30 to 40 different things that I need to juggle in my head. And someone would send me a message, right? Someone send me a message. All right, okay, I'll deal with that in a minute. I'm on a podcast. Tomorrow I'd go back and think, right, was that an email? Was that Messenger? Was that WhatsApp? Was that? And then I'd log on to all of my different sort of social media accounts and look at the messages and where is it? So for me to find one message, it was taking like 20 times the effort. So I scaled back in all of my outgoings, my interests, my businesses, my emails, my cars, my social media. And it's now a much more manageable point. But yeah, it's very easy. Anyone can get burnt out. If anyone says otherwise, they're talking rubbish.
So what changed for you to kind of get back into it? What did you have to do?
I'm much more self-aware of my abilities. I'm back to doing the thing that made me successful in the first place, which is focus on one thing and do that really well. And see, when things go well, this is a mistake a lot of people make. When things are going well, then they can add on, oh, yeah, we can take on that. Yeah, let's take on this as well. We can take on that business. And that just very gradually, just slows the whole machinery down. So now I am fully pumped. I'm doing one thing, which is Boss Pizza, and I'm doing that to the very best of my abilities. And the great thing is there is nothing else in my diary.
Okay, cool.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think it's, as you mentioned, you dial back. Do you have any outlets that you kind of tend to like be the gym, go for walks, go for a drive?
Do gym 3 times a week, football, spend time with my kids and family. Yeah, so I've got a lot of outlets. I've got a really nice work-life balance now. I'm really happy with it. Let me talk about burnout actually. So this is because I can tell you exactly what burnout looks like. You don't feel any different, but it just takes you maybe a few seconds longer to make a decision, then a few seconds. And then it got to the point where I had to sign off. I remember I had to sign off on a billboard. And normally I'd look at it and say, yep, that's great. Yep, signed off. And I would then sit on it for maybe sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks. So my decision making became slower and slower. And what should have been making decisions on the simple things was taking longer and longer. I was getting more and more irate, quicker. I was starting to shut down from friends and family. I actually just went through my phone once and just started deleting people from my life. It got to that point. So, and you don't actually realize it until you're properly burnt out. That, wait a minute, I actually realize I am properly burnt out here. And then that's where you realize, right, you need to change. And then from that point, I just started cutting back on all of my business interests, all of my social media, multiple accounts, all that type of stuff. I just cut it right back and got back to basics. And now that's really worked for me.
I'm glad you're kind of able to catch it. It can hit different severity levels. There was one lady I was speaking to at a networking event. She said she actually struggled to get up the stairs once because she was that mentally fried.
Yeah.
And she left the corporate world because of it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely important to have an outlet and know when to dial back and recognize these patterns.
Good. But well, you're pleased to know the formal questions are over, but we wanted to do a quick fire round.
Sure, let's do it.
I'll cover property business, the boring stuff.
Okay.
He's got the more sort of the nicer stuff. So quick fire round. You can't think.
Do it. Let's do it. Rapid. I'm ready.
Right. Okay. Would you rather hold or sell property?
Hold. Always hold. Never sell property. In fact, I was having this discussion with my father this morning. I've got one flat, the one that's laying empty. I thought, why don't I just renovate it and get it off my plate? And my dad said, "Bunny cheese beti dini hundi," which means if you've built something, don't sell it.
Right.
And that's from my grandfather's mentality, and obviously his father's mentality from before that. So they were in the business of acquiring farmland, and the farmer mentality: buy land, farm it, but don't sell it. Right. Next, buy and hold, never sell.
Would you rather have a bad accountant or a bad franchisee?
Bad accountant, because I can sack the accountant straight away. Whereas a franchisee, you've got a 40-page franchise agreement, which is a bit more difficult to navigate your way out of.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would you rather do the restaurant business or the property business?
A food business. And I'll tell you why. Because people think about food all day long. Every 2 hours you're thinking about food.
Absolutely.
Whereas think about it like if you're in the, I don't know, say for example, your car MOT business. Once you've got your car MOT, you don't think about it for another year unless it breaks down. Whereas food is great. You're thinking about it all the time. You've got that repeat custom. The lifetime revenue per customer is just amazing. It's into the thousands of pounds. Because if you imagine if you like a restaurant, you go there every couple of weeks for a few years. That's thousands of pounds. So food business all day long.
Would you rather deal with a bad supplier in the food business or a bad tenant in property?
A bad food supplier, again, you can sack them straight away. Whereas a bad tenant, there's so much regulation around. You can't just walk into the property and get rid of them. There is now so much regulation. People need to be aware of this.
Yeah.
And they've got to factor that into their sort of profit and loss. So for my businesses, for my properties, I've factored in maybe periods of like 3, 4, 6 months where I'm not going to get rent, or there's some issue and I'm not going to get rent. I've factored that into my calculations.
Oh, good. Well, you're pleased to know my side is done. You did well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a quick fire round.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
I think about food all the time.
Yeah, he's a real foodie. He's your ideal customer.
Oh,
I am. Extra large boss beats on the way. So, quick fire round, personal. Nothing too personal.
Sure, go for it. Let's make it personal. Let's do it.
Would you rather live in a bustling city or in the peaceful countryside?
Bustling city. Worked in London for 10 years. Loved it.
Good. Would you rather have a savoury snack or a sweet treat?
Sweet treat all day long.
What is your favourite sweet treat?
Anything with sugar in it.
Anything in it?
That covers
Cake,
everything.
Everything.
Cake, sweets, chocolate, you name it.
Oh, good.
I don't discriminate when it comes to anything sweet.
Would you rather go on a city break or suntan on the beach?
Suntan on the beach. See, like if you're working hard, I like to just go have a beach holiday, chill out, switch off, and not do anything too strenuous.
Are you a night owl or an early bird?
Early bird. I used to be a night owl. I think in the last 3-4 years I've become an early bird, but earlier on in my career I was a night owl. See when the world shuts down, 10, 11 o'clock at night, I found that's when I could do my best work because you've got no distractions, the phone's not going, the kids aren't awake. That's the best time I found to do work. But now I find early morning is just as good.
Night owl in central London. I did that once in the office late night. Stunning. Game changer. So I don't blame you.
Yeah.
That is the end of my quick fire round questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I survived that. I'm feeling good.
Are there any kind of last words of wisdom you want to give us as we're kind of embarking on our property journey? What would you want to leave us with?
If you want to get into property journey, understand this is now much, much more difficult. I mentioned energy performance certificates, Legionella, gas safety, registration with the local council. You know Section 24, are you aware of that? Yep. Okay, so Section 24 is now, before if the rent was £1,000 and you made £500 profit, you were taxed on the 500. Now the tax relief has been taken away, so you're now taxed on the full 1,000. That is the reason that rents are going through the roof, because the landlords have just put up the price because they're not going to rent out these properties at a loss. So understand this. You really need to get into the numbers, get all over the numbers, and make sure you're making a profit. And the profit margins aren't as good as what they used to be. So understand that. Number 2, get into property for the long-term gain. Don't think you're going to get into property this year and next year you're going to make it big, or 2 years. No, play the 10, 15, 20-year game. That's when you win. I'm 49 now, right? And I remember when I bought properties 15, 20 years ago, and the time's just passed by like that. So for you guys, you're thinking 20 years, my God, that's so far into the future. It's going to pass by very quick. Before you know it, the properties will be paid off.
Okay, well, great, thank you. If any of our audience wants to get to know you more or get in touch, what's the best way?
Just follow me on TikTok. I don't do anything else.
You're great on TikTok, to be fair.
I am only on TikTok. I have very, very little presence on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. It's just TikTok at Ajmal Mushtaq. Oh, let's talk about your 10 followers, right? So I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And then
the other 3
right,
are different versions of you.
right. So there are many scam accounts using my name. And I put out a video saying, please, people, just don't get sucked into buying Bitcoin or crypto. I don't do that. So hopefully no one gets scammed. So you've got 3 scam accounts and 1 original account
Yeah,
following you,
so-
and then you've got another 6 followers.
Yeah, you
And
must really like us.
And who are they?
To be fair, personal friends.
Oh, right.
I think
Yeah.
my mum's one of them.
Oh, you,
Yeah, I think my mum.
Do you know one of the reasons I'm here? You've got 10 followers, right? This is like, in terms of your status as a podcast, you're at 0, right? And I admire the fact that you're husband and wife,
Yeah.
right? Husband and wife, you're trying to make it. And see, sometimes it's nice just to sort of give someone, like come along and not have that big ego and say, you know what, I'll come on your podcast. I mean, it's taken an hour of my time. It's nothing. More than happy to help. And we all start from 0, so I remember when I had 0 followers in TikTok, and I got my first 100, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then see, when you get to 100, you think, you know what, 1,000 would be really good. Got to 1,000, then I thought, you know what, 10,000, that would be something else. And that's just the way the journey goes. So the key thing is keep churning out great content and your followers will grow steadily.
Thank you, because I did notice you made that video on your spam accounts. So I had to double, triple check that the person messaging me wasn't the spam account, and I'm glad it wasn't.
Well, actually, while we're here, would you like to buy some crypto and Bitcoin?
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, thank you. No, we appreciate your time. And
Thanks very much.
It's been great.
Time's up. Yeah, so that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yes, so
That's been
Ajmal,
really good.
thank you. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
And thank you, listeners, for listening in. And last but not least, until next time, keep moving with us.
Yep, absolutely. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well done, guys. That was really good.
Thank you.